very often when we think of acceptance at first, we think of accepting something that feels difficult to accept. So people say, oh, you need to just accept that. And that feels like, oh, you just need to resign yourself to this fact of something that's happening in your life that you don't really like. But acceptance actually is a much bigger thing than that. It's not just this kind of negative undertone. Acceptance is what you do when somebody gives you something. And people frequently say to me, just yesterday was it, or a couple of days ago, somebody was saying to me, oh yes, I can give anything to anybody. I'm always ready. I'm always there for all of my friends. But I find it very, very difficult to accept anything from somebody else. When somebody gives me a present, I feel really embarrassed and I don't know what to say. And I said to her, that's not a very graceful way of being. And there's a real imbalance. If you want to give all the time and you're not willing to accept and receive. And can you imagine if you gave, you go along and you give a present to somebody or you want to help them and they say, oh, no, I can't possibly accept that. What kind of world would we live in if we were not able to accept things from each other? And so acceptance is like a door that opens our connection with each other. And when we close that door, people can feel it. It creates a wall around you. And that wall is both an intangible kind of wall where people can feel that, oh, that person is closed. But it creates tangible barriers as well, because you can't accept the things that are given to you, the things that you're exposed to. So what immediately comes to mind is, can you accept and do you accept what people say to you? Or do you always have resistance? Like, oh, I don't want to accept that. I have to change it. I have to come back with my own view. I can't accept what somebody else has expressed. When you can accept what somebody else has expressed, even if you don't agree with it, you can then have a conversation where you're present to the conversation, not resisting and then fighting and then sort of coming back to win over the other person. So to be able to accept what's said to us, even when we don't like it, you don't have to accept it as true, but to actually be able to accept the situation enables you to be much more present in your response. To accept what another person gives you opens up the door, whether it's love and appreciation, or whether it's dinner, or a lift to work, whether it's literally a present, or whether it's their life, they're living with you. You know, if somebody has a relationship with you, they give you so much every single day. And so you can look and see how much do you feel that you are really accepting that. Probably a lot of it you accept. You live in a place of acceptance. And it's just a very beautiful place to be. We tend to draw attention to the places that we don't accept. But I really would like to draw attention today to the places that you do accept, because it makes you aware of how much you are receiving, how much you are being given through this experience of being a human. And it's really quite remarkable. When you look around, it just goes on and on and on. What we can accept. And when we accept that, what that opens up for us. And it makes you realize that living in that kind of often struggling over one tiny part of our life, when there is so much richness in it. When even, let's say, you're struggling with an aspect of your health. So there's a part of your body that's hurting and it's shouting. It's like, it's noisy. When it hurts, it's noisy. So much attention gets drawn to that. For example, if you're sick or you literally just are in pain. And yet your life, if you look around, that pain is such a tiny, tiny part of this extraordinary life that every one of us is living. And then it makes you wonder, like, how is it that we pay so much attention to that tiny part? And then it makes you realize that that little bit that hurts, it really is like a warning signal that if we could listen to it and react very quickly and stay in touch with the richness, that abundance of life that we're already experiencing, really accept the enormous gifts that you are totally surrounded by and that you are yourself, you then have a great deal of power, actually, either to absorb or to heal or to transform that little noisy part that's hurting. But if you draw all your attention into that noisy part, which creates then resistance immediately because we don't want to be in pain, you cut yourself off from the resources, from the power, from all those gifts that are yours to play with, so to speak, that then enable you to also transform that little part. So this is a shift in our relationship with ourselves, a shift into seeing the bigger picture, to being more expanded so that we have access to that gift of our life. Because when you're very focused on a small part of it, you cut off your access in a way. You just forget about everything else. When you open up and accept everything, you find that you're surrounded, absolutely surrounded by help. And we've tended to grow up with rather an island mentality. We've grown up with this sense that we are a very separate being. And we've grown up with a lot of judgment and criticism. So we criticize ourselves and our lives and the people out there and the systems out there. And again, it draws attention to those noisy parts. But if you look at the planet, even if you look at some of the worst parts, when I go to cities, I reflect so often on the traffic and the noise. And I just think, if this was just quiet or well organized, cities become a completely different place. And whenever I go to any city that has pedestrianized, Varaždin in Croatia is a great example. Very beautiful, small, I don't know if it's a city, probably it is, beautiful painted buildings, and there is just no traffic at all throughout the entire center of it. And you walk around, it's like, oh my goodness, this is so beautiful. So when I'm in a city, my attention is really drawn to the traffic and the ugliness of it and the noise and the smell and the way it dominates human life. But actually, I often really marvel. I just look at the way all these people are driving along the road, and there are people there who are highly intelligent, really well educated. And there are people there who on our intelligence scale are really unintelligent and very uneducated. And there's a real skill in driving, at 100, 110 kilometers an hour. It's very fast for a human being. And the way we manage that, it just never ceases to amaze me that we don't spend all our time crashing. Honestly, I know it sounds stupid, but I just look at it and I think, how is it? How is it that we learn a skill like that, where when we first do it, we're so hesitant, we can't go backwards, we can't turn, and there's a real challenge for many people in first learning it. And then we just get this and we automate it and we can do it all pretty much without thinking at all. And sometimes I look at the way, when you're driving and you're really used to it, so much of it is on autopilot. And it makes me realize just how incredible that is. And if you would look, if we could have just like a map that just shows the traffic flows, sort of moving traffic flows across the planet, this web of movement, of constant movement that enables us to go to places and enables us therefore to work and to share with other people, to share ourselves, to visit friends, to share our gifts, to create work, to share our time and our energy to make the world a better place, to serve other people. If you would look at that map, it would look completely different from the noisy, smelly car that's just driven past you and disturbed your little bit of peace in the city. So there's a perspective where we can see what our life really is. I mean, we're still only seeing a tiny fraction of it, of course, because imagine if you could see just a little bit of the energy workings behind all of that. I have a friend who sees energy, just like really sees energy pretty much all the time. And he talked about going into a forest in California. And he said, oh, it was like being an avatar for me. He said, it was just so beautiful, Sarah, because he can see what the energy is doing behind the physical reality. And that's as real to him. And it is as real as our physical reality. But we haven't been, it's just not part of our shared common understanding. There are people who have that gift of being able to see it. Many children can see a lot more than adults can. We know that. We often dismiss it, so we train children not to see it. But imagine if we could see just a little bit of that, just a tiny bit. I don't think we could manage seeing a lot of it at the moment. We'd be so overwhelmed, we'd just probably pack up and close our eyes. But if you could see a little bit of the energy workings, what it is that creates the ideas in human beings, what happens when you make a choice, how do your decisions get fulfilled? How do things get kind of delivered to you? How does life get organized in this extraordinary way where every single person is experiencing exactly what is their kind of bundle of energy? How does that all match together? How does it all fit together? How does that work that if I change something inside myself, all these other people change around me and my experience changes and suddenly I'm getting something that I really wanted, which I wasn't getting before? How does all of that actually happen? Like if you look at it, it's so extraordinary. You can't even begin to imagine how that happens. So when we take this bigger perspective, it puts you in a position where acceptance is the only position. Just accept this. Accept what is. Accept all of it. And as you accept it, I hope that you can really feel that now, that there's a peacefulness in accepting it. It's a peacefulness which is actually really powerful. Not powerful chest beating, macho, all about me power. But it's really powerful because it's a quiet power that enables you to see more of what's around you and therefore enables you to connect more with what's around you. And ultimately, it frees you up to make more choices, more active choices, because all those resources, let's say, it's a very human word, resources, it's like everything's there to be used. But all those resources, all that stuff that's here, all that life, all the people, the things, the places, and that intangible stuff behind it, you start to have more of a perspective or a perception of all of that, and it becomes a part of your life, which it already is. You already are on this planet, in this world. You are already influential across the whole planet by virtue of your energy and your expression of life. But when we focus in on the little things, we don't see that. When you open up and find this place of acceptance, there is so much resource available to you. And you can quietly go there, so to speak, and access it. You can see that person because you're not in this little whirl of problem here. You can see that person over there who already has the answer. You have a conversation with somebody, and instead of saying, oh, I'm so worried, I just can't listen to you, instead of resisting the conversation, you accept the wider gift of your life And you can accept the gold, that there's something in that conversation that's there for you. And so acceptance makes you somebody who's very, very rich, very prosperous in your life. Because all of that you can see is a part of your life. And there are ways of moving into all of that to come closer to this bit or closer to that bit, to accept this part into your life, like a gift into your life. And then you start to interact with that part, whether it's a human being or it's a resort, it's like a physical thing that you can do, like a car that you can buy. There are millions, I don't know, are there billions of cars on the roads? Any millions, billions, I don't know, maybe millions at least of cars across the world. But most of those cars you're never ever going to come close to. You're never going to have anything to do with. But when you want to buy a new car, there is a way in which you actually accept it, the chosen one, into your life. We think that we go out to get everything. Do we really go out? Does it come to us? It's all the same thing. But with this position of acceptance, that there are so many more resources available to you. And you can feel when you're in this peaceful, quiet place, powerful place, you can feel how repellent it would be to be in resistance now, to be in that little mental whirlwind that makes you shut your doors to the rest of the world and try to figure this out on your own. There's just no comparison between the two feelings. But this feeling of acceptance, it is quiet, because when you start to accept, it becomes so big. It's really quite humbling. And it makes you feel small. But it's that smallness and the humility that opens up the power. So if you accept it all as a form of self-glorification, you start to close off into your own world again. But if you accept it all as a connectedness, then you can feel small, but you're connected. So the bigness, the prosperity, the richness is not in you alone. It's in the connectedness of you with everything else. And so let's move beyond that very limited expression of acceptance being get over it kind of thing. Just accept what's happening to you. Expand your perception. Accept more of it. I can't say all of it because we will never know all of it individually, but accept more of it. First of all, that little thing that you're struggling with becomes very small in comparison with that. The resources to heal it become very big in comparison to that. And so there's this very, very simple, beautiful power in acceptance.